Welcome to J-Horror Oddities, a series dedicated to discovering all those weird and wacky Japanese horror movies that nobody ever talks about. Now, so far, we've looked at movies about a clown and about a nude woman who kills zombies. And this film is just as wacky, although maybe not as cool. This is The Black Assassin, a movie about a bullied schoolboy who manages to successfully turn the tables. But will this movie be as satisfying as you want it to be? Well, there's only one way for us to find out. As is common with these movies, this one stars an idol, although not a singer, but a sexy model. Erina Kamiya plays the lead female role of Kasumi, an overly complex character whose motivations are confusing for both her and the audience watching, and in the end doesn't have the satisfying character arc that the director probably thought she would. Or, he might not have given it any thought. This is a bit of a messy film to keep track of, but I'm going to try my best. It starts with a bunch of people talking about an urban legend called the Scarf Woman, who wears the scarf to cover a decaying wound on her neck. And apparently, she stinks, which I assume is because she's rotting away. We then meet a trio of schoolgirls who are talking about the Scarf Woman while waiting for a text message to beckon them to the roof. These awful girls are part of a gang of bullies who seem to target students, forcing them to do something called Dorekon, which is technically about a dress-up contest for Initial D. Remember Initial D? But in the context of this movie is the codename for a contest where a slave is chosen for a month based on the type of videos or photos they submit to a group chat. The more outrageous the image, the less likely they are to be the slave. Yôji has been chosen as the slave for this month. And during one of his punishments, which involves him licking the toilet rim after one of the girls has used it, the group of girls is interrupted by Kasumi, a rather strong-willed young girl who seems to have some issues with them. But you would never tell, as Kasumi seems to join in by taking off her panties and sticking them on Koichi's head. Hold on, that's a punishment? Let's talk a bit about Kasumi, because while she manages to stop the bullying getting worse, she's also not very nice to Yôji either. She's also not a very nice person, full stop. She has a job providing Lolita sex services to older men, where she mainly robs them, while also working at a one-way sex club where she's dancing in front of glass to a pervert, tipping her from behind it. Anyway, after the toilet incident, Yôji attempts to kill himself by jumping off the roof. But his crush Akane stops him. She reminds him about how dirty his face is and then hands him a packet of tissues and some advice. If you can't handle the bullying, maybe ask someone for help. And wouldn't you believe it, but on the packet of tissues is the phone number to a guy who runs a curse shop. Yôji meets the man who runs this curse shop business, and while initially he thinks it's all bullshit, the man manages to convince Yôji that he can get rid of someone for him. So, Yôji's target is the main bully guy. After another bullying session in the park, the target goes off to pee in the trees but never makes it back. His neck is slashed up good. Now it's time to find out a little bit more about Kasumi. Not only does she sell her body to make money, but she also lives in a rather broken home where her mother and stepfather seem to constantly argue all the time. It's here where we find out that Kasumi has a stepsister. And initially when I watched this film, I kind of missed this point, but on a rewatch, it kind of makes a bit more sense now. But even though I watched it twice, somehow I still missed the bit why Kasumi's stepfather ends up dead at the hands of the Scarf Woman. And even though it kind of makes sense later on in the film when we find out who the Scarf Woman is, it leads to a confusing moment. For me. It also leads to Kasumi ending up in a hospital with shock. While all this is happening, a group of reporters are meeting in a bar to discuss the exploits of a politician until one of them brings up the Scarf Woman and a photo that she has of a victim. She wants to write a story about it and her boss reluctantly agrees, but it means she'll need to talk to a few schoolgirls. And it's at this point, finally, where Koichi decides to grow a backbone. After surviving a mugging incident in the subway, he then confronts the two schoolgirls who gave his phone number to the reporter. With the head bully out of the way, Koichi turns the tables on them, and with the help of previously bullied students, he now forces these two girls to be his Dorekon. As the reporter digs more into the story, She visits Kasumi in the hospital, who freaks out when she's shown the photo. The reporter then gets a hot lead about the sex club where Kasumi works and decides she wants to conduct an interview. But the manager won't allow her to do that, so one of the girls gives her a uniform and now the reporter is one of the sex workers. While she's in the waiting room with the other girls, she finds out that Kasumi had a stepsister who also worked at the club. The sister was being followed by a stalker who threatened to reveal her identity. Now's the bit where the movie gets more trickier and harder to follow. The reporter has managed to set up a meeting with Koichi to ask about the photo and the scarf woman, while the man who runs the curse shop is demanding payment for the curses he's already performed. Koichi then visits Kasumi in the hospital to say thanks to him for making him a man. Nope, they didn't have sex, but he's talking about how he's now using the scarf woman to do his bidding. This triggers Kasumi because she knows the identity of the scarf woman. And now it's time for the showdown / finale / end of the movie. And hopefully you've been following along to what's happening here, because I know I've been doing a very terrible job at explaining it. The reporter meets Koichi in a factory, but he locks her in there. The reason is because the scarf woman is there and he's delivered her some fresh victims, whom she takes care of with relative ease. But his visit to Kasumi just before had sprung her back to life. We see a flashback sequence where we now learn that Kasumi's stepsister Kana is the scarf woman. Did you guess it? I bet you did it, because it's really not that obvious until this point of the film. It appears that an incident with Kasumi and a stalker caused her to go crazy. I think. Honestly, it's not explained that well. And if I think about it a bit more, it's probably all got something to do with the curse shop owner. Anyway, both sisters end up dead and this ridiculous movie is over. Or is it? It seems the curse shop owner wants to create another scarf woman, and Kasumi's freshly dead body is the perfect host. Let's assume it's a setup for a sequel that will never come. Oh boy. So where do I start? Firstly, I'm going to be completely honest. I did not like this movie at all, especially the first 30 minutes with all those bullying scenes. At times I felt like just a little bit too much and I just wanted Yôji to snap at them. But then by the end of the film, Yôji is the bully tormenting others, and I feel like he didn't learn anything at all. He went from being pathetic and unlikable to being an asshole and unlikable. And indeed, none of the characters in this film are very likable at all. None of them. I mean, Kasumi is horrible. The reporters are scumbags. And the curse shop owner is just an idiot. I mean, he makes these awful jokes at the izakaya when they're meeting. And in general, is just someone that you wish the scarf woman would kill instead. So that leaves us with a film that's barely enjoyable due to the content and the characters. So the only thing that would have saved it would have been some smut. And while it does have some very, very low level, especially when you consider that the actress who plays Kasumi has been in a few of those, softcore idol videos out there. So I'm pretty sure that the producers, could have put some of that in the film to make it just that tiny bit more palatable. And then on top of that, there's some technical issues as well. Sound effects are terrible, and the visual effects are either non-existent or they're just cheap After Effects graphics, with most of the death scenes just not shown at all. And so what you end up with is no smart, toned down violence, and a cast of very annoying twats. So, using my patent pending ghost rating, which stands for great horror or stupid trash. Using my patent pending ghost rating, which stands for great horror or stupid trash, I award this movie only 2 ghosts, and it barely gets the 2 ghosts. And I'm struggling to think why I would even give it 2 ghosts. And I've got a feeling that it's most likely down to the concept isn't too bad. Just the execution was terrible. It's one of those movies where I always complain that a movie's too long, and that it should be shorter. This is one of those movies that should have been a bit longer to try and explain a bit more, and then perhaps split up into 2 movies. And I hate that idea. Corpse Party did it, and something else did it recently. And I don't like that idea, but perhaps it probably could have worked with this particular movie. Anyway, that's The Black Assassin. It's not a very good film, but if you have seen it, and like I said with the last one, I'd be surprised if you have. But if you have seen it, what do you think of it? Leave a comment below to let me know. Otherwise, I'm the ODDITIES and you are watching Shockmania. Thank you so much for tuning into this series about Japanese horror oddities, or J-horror oddities as I'm called it. I will catch you next time. I'll subscribe to the channel.